An Ontario court has ruled that Iran intentionally shot down flight PS752. That is the passenger jet that was hit by missiles near Tehran in January of 2020. All 176 people on board were killed, including 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents. The court was ruling on a class action lawsuit brought by some Canadian families who lost loved ones. The court decision states the plaintiffs has established that the shooting down of Flight 752 by the defendants, Iran, was an act of terrorism and constitutes terrorist activity. Mark Arnold is the lawyer representing the families in this case, and he has been involved in several prior lawsuits against Iran. He joins us now. And I want to start with the decision itself. What does it practically mean?
Before answering that, be clear. Our claim is not a class action. It began as a class action. It is no longer a class action. Our claim is brought on behalf of 4 individual families who lost family members. It is out of the class action track. What the case means is that our court, on an issue of fault or liability, has decided, as we have submitted all along, that this was an intentional terrorist act under the laws of Canada, and that Iran is therefore not entitled to sovereign immunity. And our claim is permitted to go forward, as it will now in the next few months, to a damages assessment.
Okay, so let's talk about damages, because we're talking about money essentially being awarded from Iran to the families in question. How do you get it that much?
Not necessarily money.
Okay.
Not necessarily money. Justice in our case has a number of components to it, including the right to appear in a courtroom and describe what happened to these individual families. Justice is more than money. Money, yes, of course, they're looking for compensation,
yeah,
but they're looking for more than that. The right to tell their story to an independent and impartial tribunal.
Okay, and that ability has now been granted, but on the compensation, what assets does Iran have that could even be seized in Canada? How would that compensation work?
Well, first of all, I'm not about to disclose what we know about Iranian assets in Canada. This much I can say. We have Iranian assets in Canada that we will execute upon, in other words, seize, and we will also be seeking assets internationally. By that I mean, we know that Iran has oil tankers that put into a variety of countries. We will be looking internationally to seize whatever it is that we can seize once we have a determination of what the level of compensation is. We don't have that yet. That's the next step.
How are the families that you represent reacting to the decision today?
I told one of my clients this morning, I called Shaheen, and Shaheen sobbed on the phone. I sobbed with him, and then he screamed. He lost his wife and his daughter. I told my other client, Mirzad, what had happened, and Mirzad screamed he lost his son. I told Ali what had happened. He lost his niece and nephew, and he screamed and sobbed. And we have a 4th client, Jane Doe, who we cannot identify. She is a young woman that married in Iran, and she just sobbed. We're mixed emotion. This is a sad day. I wish we weren't here, and we can't bring these families back. But this is part of their search for justice, and we've taken the next important step.
I don't know of any official reaction from Iran today to this decision that the act was, in the court's decision, intentional and a terrorist act. But I know that Iran has in the past said that Canada doesn't have jurisdiction. Are you asserting that Canada does?
I'm not asserting. The Ontario Superior Court of Justice asserts it. That's good enough for me. And I'll say this directly to the Supreme Leader of Iran. Sir, we are coming after you. We are going to seize your assets, and you're going to pay for what you've done.
The families have long called for the Canadian government to take this to the International Court of Justice. Would that make it more or less likely for Canada to have success in an international forum?
Well, we now have a court decision from the Ontario Superior Court of Justice that this was a terrorist act. How our government wishes to roll that out at the international level is up to our government. This case has 2 sides. the private law side, which is what we're doing, and the public law side, which we hope our government is doing. I say hope because I have no information as to what Canada is doing to get to those international courts. They need to take that step. We're a year and a half away from this disaster. And frankly, I found the approach by the government of Canada to be sympathetic, of course, but concretely really vacant and absent.
The Canadian government has said that it would at least attempt to negotiate a settlement of some kind with the Iranian government, with the Iranian regime. How does that play into this, or is it a completely separate track?
It is a separate matter. I encourage the Canadian government to negotiate directly with Iran. The problem is that we don't have diplomatic relations between those two countries. Our claim, on the other hand, is moving rapidly, extremely rapidly, and we expect to have a judgment with a money judgment, damages determined within 2 months.
Within 2 months?
Yes, sir.
And then what?
And then we will try to collect on the judgment, as I've mentioned before. We will seek Iranian assets, and we will also seek the cooperation of the government of Canada in collecting on those assets. To date, the government of Canada has been opaque and unhelpful to the families on their individual family claim. Opaque and unhelpful. We don't understand why, and I would speak directly to our Prime Minister. Prime Minister, please, you need to help these families on their private law claim. We cannot rely on the public law claim that the government says that it's pursuing. Help us, Mr. Prime Minister.
Mark Arnold, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.